Welcome. You made it back to the second part of this amazing story. If you missed the part 1, the link is in the description of this video. Go watch it. Now let's begin. Vito answered the phone, wandering toward the windows, his free hand shoved in his pocket. Eve watched him, memorizing the way he looked in morning light, rumpled and domestic and so different from the controlled boss she'd known for 13 months. When he hung up, his expression was troubled. Problem? Eve asked. Depends. Robert drew up your severance paperwork. It's generous 6-month salary, health insurance continuation, a reference letter that'll get you any job you want. But there's something else. What? Ethan Rowe filed a complaint against me last night. Harassment. Intimidation. Threatening behavior. Vito's voice was calm, but Eve could see the tension in his shoulders. He's claiming I used my position to intimidate him into leaving you alone. Eve's stomach dropped. Oh my God. Vito, I'm so sorry. I never meant for. Stop. This isn't your fault. Ethan's an entitled asshole who can't handle being rejected. He's lashing out. He came back to where she Saturday. But it does mean things are going to get complicated. Robert's handling it, but there might be questions. Investigations. And your name is going to come up. As what? A witness. As the reason for the confrontation. They're going to want to know our relationship. If I was acting as your employer or as, he stopped. As what? As someone personally invested in your safety. Eve stood up, her mind racing. This is my fault. If I hadn't gone on that date, if I hadn't worn that stupid dress. Don't. Vito's voice was sharp. Don't you dare blame yourself for wearing a dress and going on a date. You have every right to live your life. Ethan's the one who crossed a line. And I'm the one who made sure he understood there would be consequences. He took her hands. We'll deal with this together. Robert's good. He'll make it go away. But I need you to know this might get messy before it gets better. Eve's chest felt tight. This was exactly what she'd been afraid of. Complications. Consequences. Her life becoming tangled up with his in ways that could hurt them both. But looking at him now, at the determination in his eyes and the protective set to his jaw, she couldn't bring herself to regret it. Okay, she said. We deal with it together. But Vito, I need you to promise me something. Anything. No matter what happens with Ethan, no matter how messy this gets, you don't do anything that could hurt your business or put you at risk. I'm not worth that. His expression went fierce. You're worth everything. Don't ever say otherwise. Vito. No. Listen to me. He pulled her closer, his hands framing her face. I've spent my entire adult life building an empire. Power. Money. Respect. And none of it meant anything until you walked into my penthouse and told me my kitchen was wrong. You make me feel human, Eve. You make me want to be better than what I am. So don't tell me you're not worth protecting. Don't tell me you're not worth fighting for. Because you are. You're worth everything. Tears pricked Eve's eyes. No one had ever said anything like that to her before. No one had ever looked at her like she was precious and powerful and worth the risk. I don't know what to say, she whispered. Say you'll stay. Say you'll let me take you to dinner tonight. Say you'll give us a real chance despite all the complications and the mess and the fact that this is probably the worst timing in the history of bad timing. He smiled, but it was edged with vulnerability. Say yes, Eve London. She kissed him instead of answering. Poured everything she felt into the kiss, the fear and the want and the terrifying hope that maybe this could work. That maybe she'd finally found something worth the risk. When they broke apart, Vito rested his forehead against hers. I'm taking that as a yes. It's a yes. She pulled back to look at him. But we're doing this right. Real dates. Getting to know each other. Building something that can survive outside this penthouse. Deal? Deal. He pressed a quick kiss to her lips. Now get dressed. We have errands to run. What errands? First, we're going to your apartment so you can get proper clothes. Then I'm taking you to lunch at this little Italian place my sister loves. After that, we're going to a gallery opening because I've been putting off the invitation for weeks and I want you there with me. He paused. Unless you have other plans. Eve thought about her empty apartment, her lack of a job, the uncertainty of her future. Then she looked at Vito, at the hope in his eyes and the nervous energy in his posture, and made her choice. I don't have other plans. His smile could have lit up the entire city. Good. Go get changed. I'll call the car. 20 minutes later, they were in the back of Vito's sedan, Marcus driving with his usual professional discretion. Eve had thrown on the red dress again, since it was the only thing she had, and Vito kept stealing glances at her like he couldn't quite believe she was real. You're staring, Eve murmured. I know. It's distracting. Good. He reached over and took her hand, threading their fingers together. Get used to it. I plan on staring at you for the foreseeable future. Eve's phone buzzed. She pulled it out, expecting maybe Sarah or a spam notification. Instead, it was another text from Ethan. I know you're with him. I saw the complaint paperwork. You think he can protect you? He's a criminal, Eve. He's dangerous. And once he's done with you, you'll have nothing. No job. No reputation. Nothing. I tried to be nice. I tried to give you a good date. And you humiliated me. Then you sicked your gangster boyfriend on me. That's not something I'm going to forget. You're making a mistake. And when it all falls apart, don't expect me to be there to pick up the pieces. Eve's hands tightened on her phone. The texts felt like ice water down her spine. There was something in the tone, something vindictive and cruel, that went beyond wounded pride. What is it? Vito asked, his voice sharp. Eve handed him her phone. Watched his expression go from concerned to furious in seconds. Marcus, Vito said, his voice deadly calm. Take us to the office instead of Eve's apartment. Now. Yes, sir. Vito pulled out his own phone and made a call. Robert. Ethan Rowe just sent threatening texts to Eve. I'm forwarding them now. I want a restraining order filed before noon. I don't care what it costs. He paused, listening. Good. And Robert. Make sure he understands that if he contacts her again, I won't be making phone calls to lawyers. I'll be making other arrangements. He hung up and turned to Eve. His face was a mask of controlled fury, but his hand was gentle when he touched her cheek. I'm sorry, he said quietly. I should have handled him differently last night. I should have. This isn't your fault. He's targeting you because of me. That makes it my fault. His jaw clenched. But I'm going to fix it. I promise you that. Vito, what are you going to do? Nothing illegal. Just making sure Ethan Rowe understands that there are consequences for harassment. That there are lines you don't cross. And that you, he pulled her closer, are under my protection. Which means hurting you is the same as coming after me. And people don't come after me twice. The words should have scared her. Should have reminded her that Vito Carmine wasn't just a man, he was a power in this city. Someone who dealt with threats through methods that existed outside the law. Instead, she felt safe. They pulled up outside a sleek office building in the financial district. Vito helped her out of the car, his hand firm on her lower back as he guided her through the lobby. Everyone they passed nodded respectfully. Stepped aside. Recognized him and chose not to make eye contact. This was his world. Power and danger and respect earned through fear. And he was bringing her into it. They took the elevator to the 15th floor, where Robert's law office occupied a corner suite with views of the harbor. The receptionist took one look at Vito and immediately buzzed them through. Robert was waiting in his office, 60-something, silver hair, expensive suit, and the kind of sharp eyes that missed nothing. He stood when they entered. Mr. Carmine. And you must be Eve London. He extended his hand. Robert Chen. We spoke last night. Eve shook his hand. Thank you for handling everything so quickly. It's my job. Please, sit. He waited until they were settled, then opened a folder on his desk. I've drafted the restraining order against Mr. Rowe. Given the texts and his harassment pattern, I'm confident we'll get it approved today. But there's something else we need to discuss. Vito's hand found Eve's under the conference table. What? Mr. Rowe's complaint against you isn't going away. He's got a lawyer, not a good one, but motivated. They're claiming you used your position and reputation to intimidate him. That you threatened physical violence. That you interfered with his personal life through coercion. I never threatened him physically. I know. But perception matters. And right now, the perception is that a powerful man intimidated a civilian over a woman. Robert looked at Eve. Which brings us to your role in all this. They're going to argue that you're involved with Mr. Carmine, that the relationship is inappropriate given your former employment, and that this whole situation stems from jealousy and possessiveness rather than legitimate concern for your safety. Eve's stomach churned. So what do? We get ahead of it. We document everything, the harassment, the texts, the uncomfortable behavior on the date. We establish a clear pattern of Mr. Rowe's actions that justified Mr. Carmine's intervention. And we make it very clear that your relationship with Mr. Carmine began after your employment ended, not before. But it didn't, Eve said quietly. Both men looked at her. She took a breath. The feelings started before. We both know that. I quit because of those feelings, because we couldn't pursue anything while I worked for him. But the attraction, the connection, that was there long before last night. Robert's expression didn't change. Then we don't lie about that. But we frame it carefully. You had feelings. You handled them professionally by removing yourself from the employment situation before acting on them. That shows awareness of boundaries and ethical behavior. It actually helps our case. Vito's hand tightened around hers. And if they dig deeper, if they try to paint Eve as some kind of, they won't. Because if they go after Ms. London's character, we go after Mr. Rowe's. And trust me, we've already found plenty. Robert pulled out another folder. Our investigator ran a background check last night. 3 previous complaints of harassment from women he's dated. 1 restraining order that was dropped after he settled out of court. A pattern of controlling behavior and vindictiveness when rejected. If this goes to any kind of hearing, Ethan Rowe will not come out looking good. Eve felt sick. He has a restraining order on his record? Had. It was sealed as part of the settlement. But these things have a way of becoming relevant when new allegations arise. Robert's expression was sympathetic but firm. I know this feels invasive. I know it's uncomfortable. But this is what we do. We protect our clients by making sure the truth comes out. All of it. What happens now? Vito asked. I file the restraining order today. I respond to Mr. Rowe's complaint with a detailed account of his harassment pattern. And I make it very clear to his lawyer that if this escalates, we'll bring everything into the light, including information that Mr. Rowe would very much prefer stayed buried. Robert leaned back in his chair. Most likely, he'll drop the complaint within a week. Men like Ethan Rowe are bullies. They're only brave when they think they have the upper hand. Once they realize they don't, they fold. Vito nodded slowly. And if he doesn't fold? Then we go to court. And we win. Robert looked between them. But I don't think it'll come to that. Mr. Rowe made his play. It didn't work. Now he's going to have to deal with the consequences of targeting someone under Mr. Carmine's protection. They left the office an hour later with paperwork filed, strategies in place, and the weight of reality settling over them like fog. In the elevator, Eve leaned against the wall and closed her eyes. Hey, Vito said softly. Talk to me. This is insane. 24 hours ago, my biggest problem was deciding whether to wear a dress. Now I'm filing restraining orders and dealing with legal complaints and getting background checks on my dates. I know. I'm sorry. She opened her eyes and looked at him. Don't apologize. You're protecting me. You're handling this. She laughed, but it came out shaky. I just need a minute to process the fact that my life has completely changed in less than a day. Vito pulled her into his arms, and Eve went willingly, pressing her face against his chest. He smelled like cologne and coffee and safety. We can slow down, he murmured. If this is too much. If you need space to breathe. I'll understand. Eve pulled back to look at him. Is that what you want? God, no. What I want is to take you back to the penthouse and not let you leave for a week. What I want is to make sure nothing and no one ever hurts you again. What I want is to keep you so close that the rest of the world can't touch you. He touched her face. But what I want and what's good for you might be two different things. So I'm asking. What do you need? Eve thought about it. Really thought about it. She could walk away. Could tell Vito this was too complicated, too fast, too dangerous. Could go back to her small apartment and her quiet life and her careful boundaries. But she'd tried careful. She'd tried safe. And it had left her hollow. I need you to take me to lunch, she said. Like you promised. I need you to introduce me to your sister and show me the gallery and make me feel normal for a few hours. And then I need you to take me home, to your home, and hold me while we figure out what normal looks like for us. Vito's smile was slow and devastating. I can do that. They had lunch at a tiny Italian restaurant tucked into a side street in Little Italy. The kind of place that didn't take reservations but somehow always had a table for Vito Carmine. They sat in a corner booth and ate pasta that tasted like someone's grandmother had made it with love, and for an hour, Eve forgot about Ethan and complaints and complications. She just existed. With Vito. Learning that he hated mushrooms but was too polite to tell servers. That he'd taught himself Italian from old movies. That his favorite food was his mother's lasagna, which he hadn't had in 15 years because she'd died when he was 17. Tell me about her, Eve said softly. Vito's expression went distant. Sad. She was tough. Had to be, married to my father. But she was kind too. She'd sneak me books from the library, the kind my dad thought were too soft. Philosophy. Poetry. Stories about people who weren't like us. He smiled at the memory. She told me once that reading was my way out. That no matter what happened with the family business, I could always escape inside a book. I think that's why I still read so much. It makes me feel close to her. She sounds wonderful. She was. She would have liked you. How do you know? Because she always said I needed someone who would challenge me. Someone who wouldn't put up with my bullshit. Someone who saw past the name and the power to the person underneath. He reached across the table and took her hand. That's you, Eve. You've never treated me like a boss or a criminal or someone to be afraid of. You've just treated me like a man. A flawed, messy, sometimes difficult man. And that's, his voice caught. That's everything. Eve's eyes stung with tears she refused to shed in the middle of a restaurant. Instead, she squeezed his hand and changed the subject to something lighter. They talked about movies and music and the kind of meaningless details that built intimacy. Eve learned that Vito had terrible taste in action films and excellent taste in jazz. That he'd seen every Godfather movie at least 20 times and could quote them from memory. That he secretly loved romantic comedies but would deny it if anyone asked. By the time they left the restaurant, Eve's cheeks hurt from smiling. Where to now? She asked. Vito checked his phone. Gallery opening doesn't start for another 2 hours. Want to walk? I can show you the neighborhood. I'd like that. They walked through Little Italy hand in hand, and Eve watched the way people reacted to Vito. The respectful nods. The careful distance. The way conversations stopped when he passed and resumed after he was gone. This was his power. Not loud. Not aggressive. Just present. Undeniable. Does it ever bother you? She asked. The way people look at you. He considered the question. Sometimes. Most days I don't think about it. It's just how things are. But occasionally I'll see someone, a kid, usually look at me like I'm a monster, and I'll wonder if they're right. He glanced at her. What do you see when you look at me? Eve stopped walking. They were standing on a corner, the city moving around them, and she turned to face him fully. I see someone who burns eggs trying to make breakfast for someone he cares about. I see someone who reads poetry in secret and donates to literacy programs and calls his sister every week to check on her. I see someone who's dangerous when he needs to be but gentle when it matters. She touched his face. I see Vito. Just Vito. And his more than enough. He kissed her right there on the corner, with people walking past and cars honking and the whole city as their witness. Kissed her like she was oxygen and he'd been drowning. When they broke apart, his eyes were bright. Let's go to the gallery, he said roughly. Before I forget, we're supposed to be taking this slow. Wait. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do, so you get notified for the next amazing stories. Like and comment. The most liked comment will get a shout out in the next story. Let's continue. The gallery was in Chelsea, a converted warehouse space with white walls and dramatic lighting. The opening was for a new artist. Vito's sister had discovered abstract pieces that used texture and color to evoke emotion rather than represent reality. Lucia was waiting near the entrance, dressed in a red dress that was a completely different style from Eve's but somehow perfect. She spotted them immediately and her face lit up. Finally. She rushed over and hugged Vito, then turned to Eve with open curiosity. So you're the woman who's had my brother losing his mind for the last 6 months. Eve blinked. He told you about me? Told me? He's been talking about nothing else. Eve said this. Eve did that. Eve thinks I'm organizing my books wrong. Lucia grinned. I've been dying to meet you. Lucia, Vito said warningly. What? I'm being nice. She looped her arm through Eve's. Come on. I want to show you around and interrogate you about your intentions toward my brother. Before Eve could respond, Lucia had pulled her into the gallery, leaving Vito to follow behind with an expression somewhere between amused and horrified. The next hour was a whirlwind. Lucia introduced Eve to what felt like half the city's art world, describing her as Vito's girlfriend with such casual confidence that Eve didn't have the heart to correct her. They looked at paintings and sculptures, drank overpriced wine, and talked about everything from art to family to what it was like growing up as a Carmine. It's not easy, Lucia said quietly when they had a moment alone. Being part of this family. Being connected to the name and everything it represents. But Vito, he's the best of us. He keeps us safe. Keeps us together. And he deserves someone who sees that. Who sees him. I do see him, Eve said. I know. That's why I'm glad you're here. Lucia squeezed her arm. Don't hurt him, okay? He pretends to be invincible, but he's not. Not when it comes to you. Before Eve could respond, Vito appeared at her side. Stop scaring her off. I'm not scaring her. I'm bonding with her. There's a difference. Lucia smiled at them both. I like her, Vito. Don't mess this up. Planning on it. They stayed at the gallery until sunset, then drove back to the penthouse as the city lights began to glow. Eve was exhausted emotionally, physically, completely, but it was a good kind of tired. The kind that came from a full day instead of an empty one. In the elevator up to the penthouse, Vito pulled her close. Thank you, he murmured. For what? For today. For meeting Lucia. For walking through Little Italy with me. For staying even when things got complicated. He kissed her forehead. For giving us a chance. The elevator doors opened directly into the penthouse, and they stepped inside together. The city sprawled out beyond the windows, millions of lights in the darkness, and Eve felt something shift inside her chest. This could be home. Not the penthouse, though it was beautiful. Not the address or the expensive furniture or the view. But this feeling. This sense of belonging. Of being seen and known and wanted. With Vito. I need to tell you something, she said. He turned to face her, concern flickering across his expression. What? I'm terrified. Of this. Of us. Of how fast everything is moving and how much I already feel for you. She took a breath. But I'm not running. I'm choosing to stay. To see where this goes. To trust that maybe, just maybe, this is worth the risk. Vito's hands came up to frame her face, his touch gentle despite the intensity in his eyes. It is worth the risk. I promise you that. Whatever happens, with Ethan, with the legal stuff, with figuring out how we make this work, I'm not going anywhere. You're not alone in this, Eve. Not anymore. Neither are you. He kissed her then, slow and deep and full of promise. And Eve kissed him back, pouring everything she felt into it. The fear and the want and the hope. The certainty that this was right even when everything else was uncertain. When they finally broke apart, they were both breathing hard. Vito rested his forehead against hers. Stay tonight, he said. Guest room again if you want. Or, he stopped. Or my room. No pressure. No expectations. I sleep better when I know you're close. Eve's heart squeezed. Your room. But just sleeping. We agreed to take this slow. Just sleeping, he confirmed. Though I reserve the right to hold you all night. I can live with that. They got ready for bed in comfortable silence. Vito lent her another t-shirt, this one faded and soft from years of wear. Eve braided her hair and washed her face and tried not to think too hard about the fact that she was about to share a bed with Vito Carmine. His bedroom was surprisingly simple. A massive bed with expensive sheets. A few photographs on the dresser. Bookshelves lining one wall, filled with everything from thrillers to philosophy to poetry collections. The room of someone who valued comfort over showing off. Eve climbed into bed first, and Vito followed, immediately pulling her against his chest. His arm wrapped around her waist. His chin rested on top of her head. And for the first time in longer than she could remember, Eve felt completely safe. Thank you, she whispered into the darkness. For what? For seeing me. For caring. For making me feel like I matter. His arm tightened around her. You do matter. More than anything. They fell asleep like that, tangled together, and Eve dreamed of red dresses and new beginnings and the possibility of something real. The next week was a blur of activity. Robert handled the legal situation with ruthless efficiency. The restraining order against Ethan was approved. His complaint against Vito was quietly dropped after his lawyer received the full details of his harassment pattern and previous incidents. And the threatening texts stopped completely. Eve found a new job, a position at a boutique hotel managing their high-end residential services. It was similar to what she'd done for Vito but with better hours, better pay, and no emotional complications. Well, no new emotional complications. She and Vito fell into a rhythm. Dinners together 3 or 4 nights a week. Lazy Sunday mornings drinking coffee and reading the paper. Movie nights on his couch where they argued about film choices and eventually compromised on documentaries. They kept things PG-13, though it got harder every day. The sexual tension built until it was a living thing between them, but neither of them wanted to rush. This was too important. Too real. 3 weeks after the night of the red dress, Vito picked Eve up from her apartment for their official first date. He'd told her to dress nice, wouldn't tell her where they were going, and showed up at her door in a suit that probably cost more than her monthly rent. You look beautiful, he said when she answered in a simple black dress. You clean up nice yourself. He drove them to the waterfront, to a restaurant Eve had heard of but never been to, the kind of place that required reservations months in advance. They were seated at a private table overlooking the harbor, with candles and wine and the kind of service that made Eve feel like royalty. This is too much, she said. It's not enough, Vito countered. I've wanted to take you somewhere like this since the day you told me my coffee was too weak. I never said that. You didn't have to. Your face said it every morning when you had to make it. Eve laughed, and they fell into easy conversation. By now, they knew each other's stories. Each other's quirks. The rhythm of each other's thoughts. But somehow, there was always more to learn. More to discover. Halfway through dinner, Vito reached across the table and took her hand. I need to tell you something, he said. Eve's heart kicked up. That sounds serious. It is. I've been thinking about this for weeks, and I need you to know, he took a breath. I'm in love with you, Eve London. Completely. Irrevocably. In a way that scares me and excites me and makes me want to be better than I am. And I know we said we'd take this slow, and I know it's only been a few weeks since we officially started this, but the truth is I've been falling for you since the day you walked into my life. And I can't, his voice caught. I can't pretend anymore that this is casual or temporary or anything other than what it is. Eve's eyes filled with tears. What is it? Everything. You're everything. His thumb traced patterns on her palm. I love you. I'm in love with you. And I needed you to know that. No pressure to say it back. No expectations. I just couldn't keep it inside anymore. Eve stood up. Walked around the table to where he sat today. And kissed him in front of the entire restaurant with all the feeling she'd been holding back for weeks. When she pulled away, she was smiling through tears. I love you too, she said. I've been trying not to say it. Trying to be smart and cautious and protect myself. But I love you, Vito Carmine. I love your terrible taste in action movies and your secret romance novel collection and the way you still call your sister every week even though she's perfectly capable of taking care of herself. I love that you burn eggs and read poetry and look at me like I'm something precious. I love you. All of you. Even the complicated parts. Vito stood and pulled her into his arms, holding her so tight she could barely breathe. Around them, the other diners were watching, some with smiles, some with curiosity, some probably wondering who would be bold enough to make a scene in a place like this. Eve didn't care. She'd spent too much of her life worried about what other people thought. Worried about being appropriate and invisible and safe. This being held by the man she loved in the middle of a fancy restaurant with mascara probably running down her face, this was real. This was right. This was worth every risk. Let's get out of here, Vito murmured against her hair. We haven't finished dinner. I don't care. I need to take you home. I need to, he pulled back to look at her, and the heat in his eyes made her knees weak. I need you, Eve. If you're ready. If this is what you want. Eve's breath caught. They'd been dancing around this for weeks. Building to it. Wanting it. But holding back out of some vague sense that they should wait. That slow was better. But she was done waiting. Done being careful. Done denying what they both wanted. I'm ready, she said. Take me home, Vito. He threw cash on the table, way more than the bill could possibly be, and led her out of the restaurant with his hand firm on her lower back. The drive to the penthouse felt eternal. Every red light an eternity. Every block stretching on forever. They barely made it through his front door before he was kissing her. Deep and desperate and full of weeks of pent-up want. Eve kissed him back with everything she had, her hands in his hair, his hands at her waist, both of them stumbling toward the bedroom like teenagers. Are you sure? Vito asked, breaking the kiss long enough to search her face. We can still slow down. We can. Stop talking, Eve said, and pulled him back to her. What happened next was a blur of sensation and emotion. Clothes hitting the floor. Whispered words in the darkness. Hands learning skin. The exquisite rightness of finally being together in the way they'd both been craving. Vito loved her like she was precious. Like she was dangerous. Like she was everything he'd ever wanted wrapped into one person. And Eve loved him back with equal fervor, equal need, equal certainty that this them was worth every complication. Afterward, they lay tangled together in his bed, sweaty and satisfied and grinning like idiots. That was Eve started. Yeah, Vito agreed. We should have done that weeks ago. Definitely. Eve laughed and buried her face in his chest. I can't believe I'm here. In your bed. After spending 13 months trying not to think about exactly this scenario. You thought about this? Constantly. It was a problem. Good. He pressed a kiss to her hair. I thought about it too. Obsessively. To the point where Marcus asked if I needed a vacation because I kept spacing out during important meetings. Please tell me you didn't tell him why. God, no. Though I'm pretty sure he figured it out when I started rearranging my schedule to be home during your work hours. They talked for hours after, wrapped in each other and expensive sheets, learning each other's bodies and hearts in equal measure. It was perfect. It was right. It was everything. As dawn broke over the city, Eve watched the light filter through the windows and thought about how much her life had changed in a month. How one red dress had led to this. How taking a risk, being seen, being vulnerable, being brave, had given her everything she'd been too afraid to ask for. Vito stirred beside her, his arm tightening around her waist even in sleep. Eve pressed a kiss to his shoulder and let herself relax into the moment. Into the certainty that this was where she belonged. She'd spent 4 years running from her old life, building walls to keep herself safe. And then Vito Carmine had looked at her in a red dress and seen not just the surface, but everything underneath. And somehow, impossibly, he'd loved it all. Loved her. I love you, she whispered to the sleeping man beside her. His eyes opened, bright and clear even in the early morning light. Say it again. I love you, Vito Carmine. He pulled her close and kissed her forehead. I love you too, Eve London. And I'm never letting you go. It was a promise. A vow. A beginning. And Eve believed him. 6 months later, Eve stood in front of the mirror in Vito's bedroom, their bedroom now, since she'd officially moved in 3 months ago, adjusting a red dress. Not the same one from that first night. This one was different. Deeper red. More sophisticated. But still unmistakably her. Vito appeared in the doorway, dressed in a tuxedo, and stopped dead. You can't keep doing this to me, he said. Doing what? Wearing red. It's not fair. I lose all higher brain function. Eve laughed and turned to face him. We're going to be late for Lucia's engagement party. I don't care. 5 more minutes. I need 5 more minutes to just, he crossed to her and pulled her into his arms. To just hold you and remember that this is real. That you're mine. That I get to wake up next to you every morning for the rest of my life. Eve's ring finger was still bare. They hadn't talked about marriage yet. Hadn't needed to. But she knew it was coming. Could feel it in the way he looked at her. In the way they'd built a life together. In the certainty that this wasn't temporary or casual or anything other than forever. We're going to be late, she repeated, but she didn't pull away. Let them wait. Vito kissed her softly. I want to remember this moment. You, in red. Me, completely gone for you. Us, about to face a room full of family and friends and show them what love looks like. What does it look like? Like you. Like us. Like taking risks and being brave and choosing each other every single day even when it's complicated. He pulled back to look at her. Like home. Eve's eyes filled with tears. Don't make me cry. I just did my makeup. Then let's go before I ruin it completely. They walked into the party hand in hand, and Eve felt every eye in the room turn to look at them. But she didn't feel invisible. Didn't feel judged. Didn't feel like anything other than a woman in love, standing beside a man who loved her back. Lucia rushed over immediately, gorgeous in silver, her ring finger sparkling with a massive diamond. You look amazing, she told Eve. That dress is perfect. Thanks. You look incredible yourself. Engaged life suits you. It does. Lucia glanced between them. So when's Vito going to get his act together and put a ring on your finger? Lucia, Vito warned. What? I'm just saying. You've been together for months. You live together. Everyone knows your endgame. What are you waiting for? Eve squeezed Vito's hand. We're not waiting. We're just enjoying where we are. But later that night, when they got home and Vito pulled her into his arms on their couch, he said quietly, she's right though. About what? About us being endgame. About me wanting to make this official. He turned to face her. I don't have a ring yet. I wanted to wait until I found the perfect one. But I need you to know I'm going to marry you, Eve London. Maybe not today or tomorrow. But soon. When the moment's right. When I can't wait one more day without calling you my wife. Eve's heart was pounding. Is this a proposal? No. This is a promise. When I propose, it'll be perfect. Romantic. Everything you deserve. But I needed you to know that it's coming. That this isn't just me loving you, it's me choosing you. Forever. Eve kissed him with everything she had. With all the love and certainty and joy she felt. When they broke apart, she was smiling through tears again. I can't wait, she whispered. Me neither. And they didn't have to wait long. 3 weeks later, Vito took Eve back to the restaurant where he'd first told her he loved her. They had dinner at the same table overlooking the water. They talked and laughed and shared wine. And when dessert arrived, there was a ring sitting on the plate. Simple. Elegant. A single diamond that caught the candlelight and threw rainbows across the table. Vito got down on one knee in front of the entire restaurant again and took her hand. Eve London. You walked into my life in a red dress and changed everything. You made me want to be better. Made me feel human. Made me understand what home really means. His voice was steady, but his eyes were bright. I love you. I choose you. And I want to spend the rest of my life making you as happy as you've made me. Will you marry me? Eve didn't hesitate. Didn't need to. The answer had been yes since the moment he'd kissed her in his penthouse and promised to know her. Really know her? Yes, she said. Yes, yes, yes. He slid the ring onto her finger and stood to kiss her, and the restaurant erupted in applause. Eve laughed against his mouth, unable to stop smiling, unable to believe this was her life now. They left the restaurant engaged, giddy, already planning a future that felt as certain as sunrise. 6 months later, they got married in a small ceremony at sunset on the rooftop of Vito's penthouse. Just family and close friends. Lucia as maid of honor. Marcus as best man, which had surprised everyone except Eve. She'd seen the quiet friendship between them, the mutual respect. Eve wore a dress that wasn't red. It was ivory, elegant, simple. But underneath, her shoes were crimson. A private nod to the night that changed everything. Vito noticed immediately when he lifted her dress to remove her garter, and his eyes had gone dark with want and love and memories. The reception was everything Eve had never known she wanted. Intimate. Warm. Full of laughter and stories and the kind of joy that came from being surrounded by people who genuinely cared. During their first dance, Vito pulled her close and whispered, "I never thought I'd have this." Have what? A wedding. A wife. Someone who looks at me and sees past everything else to just me. He pressed a kiss to her temple. You gave me that, Eve. You gave me everything. You gave it to me first. You saw me when I'd spent years trying to be invisible. You made me brave enough to wear a red dress and walk out that door. She pulled back to look at him. You made me brave enough to be seen. You were always brave. I just got lucky enough to witness it. They danced under string lights as the city glowed around them, and Eve thought about the path that had led her here. The broken engagement. The cross-country drive. The years of hiding and building walls and keeping herself safe. All of it had been leading to this moment. To this man. To this life she'd been too scared to imagine. Sarah, her best friend who'd flown in from Connecticut, found her later near the dessert table. So, Sarah said, grinning. Remember when you called me that morning and told me you'd quit your job because you kissed your boss? Eve laughed. I remember you screaming so loud I had to hold the phone away from my ear. I was excited. I'd been waiting for you to make a move for months. Sarah nudged her shoulder. Look at you now. Married to the guy. Living in a penthouse. Looking happier than I've ever seen you. I am happy. Deliriously, impossibly happy. Good. You deserve it. Sarah's expression went serious. Your parents called me, you know, last week. Asked if I was coming to the wedding. If they were invited. Eve's chest tightened. She hadn't spoken to her parents in over 4 years. Hadn't invited them to the wedding. It had been one of the hardest decisions she'd made, but also one of the clearest. They'd made their choice when they'd cut her off. This was hers. What did you tell them? That it was your day and your decision. That maybe they should have thought about wanting to be part of your life back when you needed them, not now when you're successful and happy. Sarah squeezed her hand. I know it's complicated. But you made the right choice, Eve. You built a life on your own terms. You don't owe them access to it. Thank you, Eve said softly. For understanding. For being here. Always. Sarah glanced across the rooftop to where Vito was talking with Lucia. He's good for you. I wasn't sure at first the whole Mafia boss thing was concerning. But the way he looks at you. Like you hung the moon. That's real. It is real. He's real. This whole crazy story is real. Later that night, after the guests had left and the caterers had cleaned up, Eve and Vito stood at the edge of the rooftop looking out at the city. Eve was still in her wedding dress, though she'd kicked off the red heels. Vito had lost his jacket and tie, his shirt partially unbuttoned. Mrs. Carmine, he said, testing out the name. That's me. How does it feel? Eve considered. Right. Scary. Exciting. Like I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. She turned to face him. How does it feel for you? Like I finally have everything I've ever wanted. Like I can breathe properly for the first time in my life. Like, he pulled her close. Like home. We keep using that word. Because it's true. You're my home, Eve. Not this penthouse. Not the city. You. Wherever you are, that's where I belong. Eve kissed him, slow and deep and full of promise. When they broke apart, she said, "Take me to bed, husband." "Gladly, wife." They went inside, leaving the city lights behind, choosing instead the intimacy of their bedroom. Their home. Their life together. As Vito slowly unzipped her wedding dress, pressing kisses along her spine, Eve caught sight of them in the mirror. The powerful man and the woman in ivory. The gangster and the former maid. The two people who shouldn't have worked but somehow did. "I love you," she whispered. "I love you more," he countered. "Impossible. Want to bet?" They spent the rest of the night proving each other wrong, and Eve fell asleep in her husband's arms, happier than she'd ever imagined possible. The next morning, they flew to Italy for their honeymoon. 2 weeks of Tuscany sunshine and tiny villages and wine that tasted like summer. They explored ancient cities and ate too much pasta and made love in a villa overlooking rolling vineyards. On their last night, they sat on the terrace watching the sunset, and Vito said, "I want to tell you something." "That sounds serious." "It is. I've been thinking about the future. About what I want my life to look like in 10 years. 20 years. He took her hand. "And I want out." Eve's eyes widened. "Out of what?" "The business. The family operations. All of it." He turned to face her. "I've spent my entire adult life building an empire I inherited. Playing a role I never asked for. Being someone I'm not sure I even recognize anymore. And meeting you, marrying you, has made me realize I don't want to do this forever." "Vito. Let me finish. I'm not saying tomorrow. I'm not even saying next year. But I want to transition out. Find legitimate businesses to invest in. Step back from the dangerous stuff. Build something that," he stopped. "That I can be proud of. That our kids can be proud of. That doesn't come with constant threat and violence and moral compromise." Eve's throat felt tight. "You've thought about kids?" "Of course I have. 2, maybe 3. Little girls with your eyes and your stubbornness. Little boys who I can teach to read poetry and treat women with respect." His smile was soft. "A family, Eve. A real family. One that doesn't come with bodyguards and threats and the constant weight of living in this world. That's a beautiful dream. It's more than a dream. It's a plan. I've already talked to Lucia about taking over more responsibilities. About grooming her husband to step into leadership. About systematically extricating myself from the operations over the next 5 years." He squeezed her hand. "I want a different life. With you. And I'm willing to do whatever it takes to build it." Eve threw her arms around him, tears streaming down her face. "I can't believe you're real. I can't believe this is happening. Believe it. You changed me, Eve. Made me want to be better. Made me see that I don't have to be my father. That I can choose differently." He pulled back to look at her. "So that's what I'm choosing. You. Us. A future that doesn't require me to be someone I'm not." They made love on the terrace that night, under Italian stars, and Eve felt like she was living in a dream. The kind of dream she'd been too practical to imagine. Too scared to want. But it was real. All of it. The love and the promise and the possibility of a future that looked nothing like either of their pasts. When they returned to the city, Vito started the slow process of transitioning out of the family business. It took 3 years. 3 years of careful negotiations and power shifts and finding legitimate enterprises to invest in. 3 years of building something new while dismantling something old. And through it all, Eve was beside him. Supporting him. Challenging him. Loving him through the hard days and celebrating the victories. She'd started her own business, a high-end household management company that catered to the city's elite. Turned out, 13 months of managing Vito Carmine's impossible standards had prepared her for anything. Her company thrived, grew, became the gold standard in the industry. They bought a house in the suburbs. Nothing as grand as the penthouse, but comfortable. Warm. The kind of place that felt like a home instead of a showpiece. They filled it with books and art and the life they were building together. And when Eve got pregnant 2 years after their wedding, Vito cried. actually cried, held her and shook with joy and relief and the weight of becoming a father. Their daughter was born on a Tuesday morning in spring. Dark hair, bright eyes, perfect in every way. They named her Sophia, after Vito's mother. Holding her for the first time, Eve felt something shift in her chest. A fierce, primal love she'd never experienced before. This tiny person who was part her and part Vito and entirely her own. This miracle they'd created together. She's perfect, Vito whispered, standing beside the hospital bed, his finger wrapped in their daughter's tiny fist. She's ours, Eve said. Yeah, she's ours. They brought Sophia home to a house full of family and friends and love. Lucia bought approximately 1 million pink outfits. Marcus brought a stuffed bear that was bigger than the baby. Even Robert, Vito's lawyer, showed up with a college fund already established. The first few months were chaos. Sleepless nights and endless diapers and learning how to be parents to this tiny human who depended on them completely. But it was also the best time of Eve's life. Watching Vito with their daughter, the gentleness, the awe, the way he sang to her in Italian when she couldn't sleep, confirmed everything she'd ever believed about him. He was a good man. Complicated and flawed and still dangerous when necessary. But good. And their daughter would grow up knowing that. Would grow up in a home filled with love and books and the freedom to choose her own path. On Sophia's first birthday, they threw a party in their backyard. Family and friends gathered to celebrate, and Eve found herself standing at the edge of the chaos, watching Vito chase their daughter around the lawn while she shrieked with laughter. Sarah appeared beside her. You did good, London. Eve smiled. She'd kept her maiden name professionally, but she was Eve Carmine now in every way that mattered. We both did. True. Though I still maintain that your story is more dramatic than mine. Former Maid falls for Mafia boss, transforms his entire life, ends up living happily ever after with a baby and a business empire. That's movie material. It's real life material. Messy, complicated, beautiful real life. Speaking of which, Sarah pulled out her phone. Remember that red dress from the night everything changed? How could I forget? Lucia posted a throwback photo today. She showed Eve the screen. It was a picture from the gallery opening, 7 years ago. Eve in the red dress, Vito looking at her like she was the only person in the world. The caption read, "The night my brother stopped pretending he wasn't in love. Happy anniversary to the couple that taught me what real love looks like." Eve's eyes filled with tears. That feels like a lifetime ago. It kind of was. You're completely different people now. We're better people. You are. Both of you. Sarah hugged her. I'm proud of you, Eve. For taking the risk. For wearing the dress. For being brave enough to be seen. Later that night, after the guests had left and Sophia was asleep in her crib, Eve and Vito sat on their back porch watching the stars. 7 years, Vito said. Since the red dress. Since you changed my life. He pulled her close. Best 7 years I've ever lived. They've been pretty good for me too. He laughed. Pretty good. That's all I get. Fine. They've been extraordinary. Life-changing. Everything I never knew I needed. She turned to kiss him. Better. Much. He was quiet for a moment. Do you ever regret it? Taking the risk? Quitting your job? Starting all of this? Eve thought about it. Really thought about it. The complications and the challenges. The legal battles and the gossip. The difficulty of merging their worlds and building something new. Then she thought about Sophia sleeping upstairs. About the business she'd built. About the life they'd created together. About the man beside her who'd loved her through everything. Not for a second, she said. Best decision I ever made. Mine too. They sat in comfortable silence, and Eve thought about the woman she'd been 7 years ago. Scared. Hiding. Too afraid to be seen. Too careful to take risks. Living a life that was safe but empty. That woman wouldn't recognize her now. This version of Eve who ran a successful company and raised a daughter and loved a man who'd been willing to change his entire life to build something better with her. Thank you, she said quietly. For what? For seeing me. That night. When I walked out in the red dress. You could have looked away. Could have stayed silent. Could have let me leave and never said anything. She met his eyes. But you didn't. You saw me. Really saw me. And you weren't afraid of what you saw. Vito's expression went soft. I was terrified of what I saw. You were everything I'd convinced myself I couldn't have. Everything I thought I didn't deserve. But I couldn't let you walk away. Not without trying. Not without telling you what you meant to me. I'm glad you did. Me too. He stood and offered his hand. Come to bed, Mrs. Carmine. We have a toddler who'll be up at dawn demanding pancakes. Eve took his hand and let him pull her to her feet. They walked inside together, checking on Sophia one more time before heading to their bedroom. The house was quiet. Peaceful. Full of the life they'd built. As Eve got ready for bed, she caught sight of something in the back of her closet. Red fabric. She pulled it out and smiled. The dress. The original red dress from that night 7 years ago. She'd kept it, couldn't bring herself to get rid of it even though she'd never worn it again. What are you smiling at? Vito asked, coming up behind her. She held up the dress. Remember this? His eyes went dark. How could I forget? That dress nearly killed me. Want to see me wear it again? Now? Why not? Sophia's asleep. We have the night to ourselves. And I'm feeling nostalgic. You're going to be the death of me, Eve Carmine. Probably. But what a way to go. She changed in the bathroom, and when she came out, Vito was sitting on the edge of their bed, watching her with the same intensity he'd had 7 years ago. The same hunger. The same love. Where are you going dressed like that? He asked, echoing his words from that first night. Eve smiled. Walked toward him with the same confidence she'd found 7 years ago. Stopped right in front of him and said, nowhere. I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. He pulled her into his arms, and they fell into bed together, still in love, still discovering each other, still building a life that neither of them had imagined possible. Outside, the city lights glowed. Inside, two people who'd found each other against all odds held on tight and chose each other. Again. Always. Because that's what love was. Not the dramatic beginning or the perfect moments. But the daily choice. The commitment. The willingness to build something together even when it was hard. And as Vito kissed his wife in the red dress that started it all, he knew with absolute certainty that he'd make the same choice every day for the rest of his life. Eve London, now Eve Carmine, had walked into his penthouse and changed everything. And he'd never been more grateful for anything in his entire life. The end. Before you go, hit that subscribe button if you're not already part of our community. We post stories like this every week that will keep you hooked from start to finish. Drop a comment below and tell me what you thought of Eve and Vito's story. And don't forget to smash that like button to help more people discover these emotional journeys. Your support means everything. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next story.